All right, welcome back to another episode of the impact of generative AI in marketing. I'm Steven Strauss, and this whole series is about just that. What is the true impact of generative AI in the marketing world today? And I'm super excited to have my friend Casey Terrell here to talk a little bit more about that and how he's seeing it impact the marketers' everyday lives. Casey, say hi to the audience and give us a quick introduction.
Yeah, hello to our millions of fans. Yeah, good to see you, man. It's always a pleasure, right? So I do a quick intro, I guess, about my long and illustrious career, fooling people into buying things they don't need.
Please do.
Um, so I was a West Point guy. I was in the Army for a little bit. Was in tanks, which was kind of a funny thing.
Wow.
Got out and then had to figure out what I wanted to do after the Army. There was a bit of story there, but anyway, so went to Burger King after business school, and 3G Capital just bought them. So a bunch of us went in, and it was a massive turnaround. It was a pretty crazy time to be there. Patty Gervino was a very awesome person I worked with at Burger King. She had gone to Outback Steakhouse, so very much look up to Patty. So went with her there. Was there for a couple of years. Ran a brand called Pinch a Penny. We did marketing and operations, so did both, which was cool. It's a 250 store chain based out of Florida. It is like pool supplies, outdoor barbecue, that kind of thing. Went back to New York to Le Pain Quotidien, which means the daily bread in French. It's a Belgian bakery concept. So did global brand, U.S. marketing, digital, a bunch of stuff. After that, went to Anheuser-Busch to AB InBev, worked on direct to consumer. That's kind of a fun one because little known fact, hopefully they still exist, but we had 600 bars and restaurants that we own. So there was like,
What?
yeah, like Budweiser.
That is a little known fact. And I've worked with AB InBev for a lot of my career. I can't believe that. Okay, continue.
Yeah. So we had like Budweiser clubs in Shanghai, like in China. And we had a Corona bar in Colombia. There was, I don't know if you like Hoegaarden. It's a Belgian wit beer. We had a awesome experience. It's all D2C experiential stuff, right? So worked for a guy named Bruno Farber and Pablo Paniza, awesome dudes. So I was there for a couple of years and then went to Focus Brands. Was on Schlotzsky's, which I know is a Texas guy, Austin guy,
Dude, best sandwich out there.
Yeah,
Still
man,
love it. I'm a huge Schlotzsky's fan. You got to
yeah.
get the regular original. If you call it a regular, then they know that you've actually been going there for a long time. Because I don't even think you call it a regular original anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to take your word for that because you definitely know more about this. No, I love Schlotzsky's. He's an awesome brand.
That was the size. They didn't do small, medium, large. They did regular. The regular was the middle size one. Anyway,
we can get on the Schlotzsky's rabbit hole. Do you know what Schlotzsky's means? Nothing.
I don't think it means absolutely nothing. It's just really difficult to say, which was the reason that they came up with it. It's not even the guy's name or anything. No. But it was started in Austin, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Right? On South Congress. Yeah. So we did an offsite there, which was super cool. So Nicole DeBose, who you should have on, we did this whole thing there and went to the original location. It was really cool. Anyway, so it was at Schlotz, went to did digital transformation for all 7 brands of Focus, and then went to that was a wild thing. So speaking of AI, generative AI, a lot of machine learning with stuff we can get into. And then went to SPB as the CMO. So I was first started at Crystal, and then we put all the company together, 17 other brands. So we had J. Alexander's, Logan's Roadhouse, Old Chicago. Was there for a little bit, and now I'm a bit of a free agent doing contract and fractional work. Working with friends, which is a really cool thing. And, just doing everything AI.
There you go, man. No, I love hearing that. Doing everything AI.
Yeah,
I think that's funny, right? Which the question naturally begs itself, what is everything AI? So just to kick things off, Casey, what's your take so far, especially in the last couple of years, of just the impact that AI and generative AI are having in the consumer brand space?
Yeah, it's funny. It's gone from this world of terror to okay, this is actually a tool, So I'm on an advisory board for a company called Rad AI that we can talk about later. But Rad does some really cool stuff with kind of social listening, and then taking, those models and segments that they find, and then they put it into a score essentially for creative, which is a great use case for it. But I think marketers and just in general, we're trying to figure out, what do we use this for? And how do you even really define AI? Because, generative AI for sure, but this isn't like sentient or truly an intelligent, hey, I can sit and have a conversation with you and it passes the Turing test, right?
Sure.
Like it's a tool and it's still a tool and it's going to be one, I think, for a little while. So how do you use it?
Gotcha, totally. And with that, one of the things when we think about its impact overall, and the way that it's really starting to try to revolutionize marketing in general, like which outside of marketing, like do you feel like there's other industries that it is either more impactful for or that are ahead of the game when it comes to actually leveraging the benefits of generative AI?
Yeah, I mean, Google search, obviously, with like, I didn't know that you were supposed to put, to get cheese to stick on, that you're supposed to glue it. Like, that was
What?
great.
What?
No, that's the, so it's funny. It's like the good cautionary tale. I mean, they were trying to power like AI and machine learning needs data sets to build its models and understand,
Sure.
right? So Google uses Reddit, and there's a lot of snark and sarcasm in Reddit, and there were comments. I mean, it was something that was like 10 years ago, where somebody asked a question of like, "Hey," they were in like a pizza forum, and they're like, "How do I can't get my pizza like the cheese to melt? It keeps sliding off."
Glue it.
And a guy gave a great answer, and at the bottom he was like, "Or you can just glue it." Like clearly, you look at it and you see that it's satire, it's funny. Well, because it's building its data set off that language, it put that in as an answer in the
Sure.
generative part, and you're like, oh,
Well, it's satire because everybody on Reddit is like,
oh,
upvoting it the entire time because
right,
hilarious, way to go, love this idea.
yeah. So it's that
Must be
like
true.
it's only as smart as the data you feed it, right? It's just like if you teach a little kid to be a monster, well, it wasn't that the kid was inherently bad. It was what'd you tell him,
Sure,
So
sure.
that's been some of the interesting those kind of revelations of that whole like garbage in equals garbage out. It doesn't matter if it's generative AI or literally anything else. Like it has to be trained on things that make sense. And it does worry me because I think, you and I have been in the natural language processor world and social listening and like, all that stuff. And, if you train something, it's no different. It's just gotten a lot better and a lot faster and smarter, but it is still based on like human interactions with each other.
Totally. It's super. I think that the human element of it is still super interesting, right? In the fact that like we want to give this technology that we as humans have built the ability to go do the things we have taught it to do, but
Right.
the question then becomes what you're talking about is man, it really makes you think about all the inputs over the years, like raising kids. Like what were all your inputs every single time? Did you really reinforce the things that were so impactful? I guess for me, like where's it? Let's think about like the positive sides of this. Like, what's
Sure.
a good example that you've seen so far? Real world example of like a good use of AI in the marketing world, whether that's with your business today or with any of the businesses that you've been in the last couple of years.
I mean, really tactically, stuff like I need 10 subject lines for an email. I need 10 that I can A/B test. Give me 10. And you put it into, and again, I'll just use ChatGPT. I think that's whatever is the most comfortable with,
Sure.
but it spits out, I need it in this brand, in their tone and voice. It scrapes the entire internet. And it gives you 10 subject lines that you can then, oh, I didn't have to write those. I didn't have to pay a copywriter. Or if I paid a copywriter, maybe they came up with a few on their own and then they just put in a whole bunch more based on their tone and style and voice. So like that kind of stuff of just, it's cheesy, but the Army would say like force multiplier. Like you gave somebody a tool and they're now 10 times more effective. So
Totally.
I may have told a copywriter in the past or an agency partner or whatever, I need 3 versions of this. And, you get it in a week. You might get it in, a minute or 2 minutes or whatever. Right. So it's not like it's at the same time though, I still need somebody or I need to, or whoever needs to read through all of these and make sure that they actually make sense because it's not perfect. Or is this really right? There's still that little bit of like you said, the human element with all kinds of creative. So you're always going to have a creative mindset, but is it going to give me a million versions of something that I can go through and choose? That is a real world example of it just made my life a lot easier.
Totally, right? Do what human. It kind of think what you're saying is like do what humans can do, just do it faster, right? I mean, that's the
Right.
whole premise behind the way that all of this works. But you actually dive into a really interesting place, and it's because as I think about it as a marketer, and I think about man, top terms used by marketers over the last 10 years, personalization is up
Mhm.
there, right?
Right.
Like, that's the
Right.
one that always comes out, and regardless of what we think about the word itself, like the thing that sits behind it is creating this one-to-one conversation, or at least as close to one-to-one as you can. And like your email example is interesting, but like how do you think AI outside of just email allows us to really hone in on a true aspect of personalizing that conversation between our brand and potential consumers?
Yeah. I mean, I'll give a food and bev example on something that we're doing at Focus. So I think we talked about this before, but the like loyalty is a perfect example of actual personalization. And I don't think anybody's truly cracked it yet, but it's getting better. Whereas Steven likes points, Casey likes a free product, Jamie might like something else, right? And in a lot of retail and D2C and B2C, we just spam everybody. And so it's, hey, here's an offer. Pull the lever. It's a BOGO. Everybody go get that. Whereas
Yeah,
that's not what people want. If I'm going to give you data, you should know something about me. That this is what I bought from any store. Like I am a medium. Don't send me, larges or things are on clearance that are, oh, everything is too small or too big or whatever. So that type of personalization that normally would have been an Excel spreadsheet that I could have done. I could have tracked all this information in Punch or Patronix or wherever, my ecom solution for loyalty, and parsed it out and taken forever. Like, all right, now I know what Steven has bought from a Schlotsky's over the last 10 years. This guy seems to like the original. Right? That's what he comes and gets. He comes in this time. And you could do it, but it would take you forever. And like I said, it was just Excel hell. So now I think with AI can do all of those things a hell of a lot faster and get you to the so what? Because ultimately we don't want to sit and build a model and do all this stuff. What you really want is what do I do with it?
sure.
So if you have them do all the grunt work, then now I have an answer and I can automate it. So like CDPs and all of those things. Here's all of this information. AI can just set and forget, maybe even start buying programmatically on its own, and then it real time is going to get smarter and better. Oh, we tried all these versions of things and these offers, it didn't work. Okay, update the model, update the model. I could have done that, but not me, but
Have you seen
somebody.
that? Have you seen that in practice? Like I love the like what you're talking about is the where we'd like to be. Have
Yeah.
you seen anybody at least in a portion or like testing it out a small like that what you just mentioned, right? The idea of like coming up with a certain type of content or offer, pushing it to consumers in a programmatic way. Like have you guys have you seen actual testing and seen any success there?
Yeah, that was part of the transformation of Focus. So
Oh,
Christian
cool.
Kuhn was the guy that was running customer engagement. We had an entire data science team. We'd hired these guys that were PhDs in data science to make sure they were building out models, and then we were Christian's team was pushing out email, SMS, what all these different customer touch points, and that was the goal. Did the $5 off at Jamba work better than points? Work better than this? Because I knew that I had all this person's information, and I results are to be seen, right? But yeah, there are brands I think that are trying it. um the bigger ones, Domino's, Chipotle, like the usual, I would be shocked if they haven't at least tested and tried some stuff.
Do you think there's a risk in any of that with like over personalization? Like where we get like people always talk about it being creepy. You see like some sort of item you go look at or thinking or shopping for online, and all of a sudden, I mean, let's be honest, it all happened to us. Then it's everywhere. It's like
Right.
all encompassing, all you can think about, right?
Yeah.
In being there. It's like does that risk exist, or do you think we could actually do a better job of it?
I
The way
think
that we
it's
think about it with AI?
Yeah, I think that it's creepy if it doesn't solve a problem. It's one of those things where,
Sure.
like, if it's like a godsend of, a very random example, but I was taking my daughter to a camp this morning, right? And it like my Google Maps knew because I'd gone earlier yesterday at the same time. It suggested, "Oh, are you going to Peach Pit in Atlanta?" Yes, that's exactly where I'm going. Gymnastics camp. Thank you for solving that. It would have been really weird if it had given me something, maybe that was personalized to me of or it didn't solve the problem, or like it was another swipe of like,
Sure.
oh, are you going to work? I'm like, no, I don't want to go to this office. I need to go to this other place. Then it's annoying. But I think that if it solves a problem, but it's extremely subjective, and we're emotional, right? We're not ruled by the neocortex. We've got two other layers of brain. We've got the lizard one, and we got the other one that was a little bit higher intelligence, and then
Sure.
we have rationality up here, right? So like we're just emotional creatures. So I think it is something where it's a fine line, where if you give your information to Dunkin' Donuts, you better know that when I walk in and scan my code that it was me, and that this is my usual drink that I get, yada yada, or whatever, right? Or Starbucks, whoever it is. But it is creepy if it starts. I think retargeting ads are creepier than that.
Totally.
I think follow
I
you
mean,
all over the
I think there's
internet.
a bit. Well, I think there's a seriously. I think the whole retargeting piece is a very interesting thing. That, by the way, has been discussed as to like does that creepiness actually bring a negative opinion of my brand and of the products that my brand is trying to sell too? Right. I mean, like that conversation has happened a lot.
Absolutely. I think that would be something for some. AI is probably a good way to do it, because otherwise it'd be pretty manual. But I've gotten retargeted after I made a purchase. Like, stop showing me a pair of boots. Like, I already bought them. You know what I mean?
You know who's terrible at that? Google's terrible in Gmail.
Yeah.
The things they show at the top of Gmail all the time, the number of things that I've actually already purchased, to your point,
Right.
that show up there again. And I always think about it like, man, that's a wasted ad spend, right? We're talking about fraudulent ad spend, wasted ad spend, all that kind of stuff. Man, how do you tie those things together? I'm with you.
I think that's kind of so this. People want to go in these rocket ships, and we're going to do an entire movie now that's AI. And like, there's a lot that you can fix right now to make things a bit more personalized that are exactly what you said. Don't show me ads on stuff I already purchased, or that I have no intent to.
Yeah, exactly right. And I mean, with that though, there still is quite a bit of innovation, right? That's coming through in all of this. And I guess I'm curious to get, when it comes to innovation and really thinking about the role that AI plays in the innovation in this rapidly changing digital landscape that we've had. Like, what do you think about the creative content, the marketing strategy, the idea that AI can help us come up with better ideas of how to go execute on our consumer conversation, right? Not the personalization part, but actually like coming up with the way that it's relevant in general. Like, have you experienced that, and what are your thoughts there?
Like, just like the ideation side. It's funny because I'll give a very specific example. Not to be a shill for Publicis, but they've got an entire, like, Marcel was their AI that they came out with first, and then they have tripled down. They took all of their profit from 2 years or something like that and put it all into AI tools. And it was stuff of, they're going to do a pitch for a client, right? And say it's Nike. Well, they have data and pitch books and stuff and presentations from, I'm sure, a lot of apparel over the years, over 90 years.
Sure.
So the AI is able to collect all of those and say, these were all of the best ideas and ideas that we did. Here's the data that Nike gave us. Here's a pitch. And I don't think I don't think they've launched any of that. But again, it was in the investor deck and video that they did. But I was like, man, that is a great idea. It just saves somebody a ton of time. The other side was on media with, like you said, with programmatic and some of the other things of, how media works. I put out a flight, especially retail. Okay, we got to wait a couple days, see if the sales and traffic are there. Did econ come through? Did the POS data come through? Okay, all right, media planner goes back. Hey, let's tweak it. Let's buy some more points here, some impressions here. Some of the stuff that they're talking about doing is all that is real time. And so it's all connected with sales and traffic data. I know exactly how much purchases happen, and they're making bids and rebids and programmatic in real time, doing real things. That to me is solving a problem, because I don't have to wait. I don't have to wait to do a post-mortem on a media buy. Right away if it worked or if it didn't, or if the creative worked or it didn't. All right.
For you, do you think that that's so I want to jump into the media buying real fast, because I do you, like what, there's a few different areas of marketing. We think about brand, think about content and strategy, and then we think about like effectiveness of media. Across those three, like, do you think media buying is the one that's most ripe for like true improvement utilizing AI, or do you feel like it's a mix across the board? Like, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think it's probably a mix, but the all the creative side we should get back to. But I think we've already had it with programmatic. But that's like 10 years. Well, probably older now, 12 years old now.
I think that's my point, right? Like, yes, but I don't know. Continue. I
It's
don't want to
still,
interrupt.
it's still not very fast. It's still a ton of a human element of, hey, we know the audience. We're going to go find lookalikes of Steven in this demo and psychographic or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it's still like, oh, we're going to wait till the flight ends. And then, yeah, there's
Every time.
there's some adjustment along the way, but not like what I think an AI could do to essentially be replanning every day, like constantly, because people have to go to bed, or you get KPIs back in Excel and you're like, okay, well now I can change some of the metrics here. But on the creative
or because
side,
it's the way we're used to working.
yes,
like how bad is, that one stays, true too.
Right. You're like, oh, I think it worked because we had a sales lift here. And you're like, okay, well, if you set a machine to do that and just constantly monitor it, I just think that's what's going to come eventually. Totally. It's not going to replace a media planner though, because you still have to have somebody to set it in motion, but their tools are just that much better. On the creative side, look, man, humans are an algorithm. We like what we like. There is a very clear, like, we all get emotional about certain things. You put music to something, right? I don't think we're that much of a mystery, and that's getting cracked. Like that code's getting cracked. And so AI will be able to write a script for something that is guaranteed to make this demographic cry or whatever. So like that rad AI tool of going out and doing social listening and finding your specific audience that you may not even know even talked about you. It scrapes the internet, builds that persona. And then whatever creative you've made, it scores it against what those people like, right? What their conversations, what they've said. That to me is an AI use case of how do you score creative right now? You have to put it in a focus group and then maybe in Kantar, right? And you got to wait a couple of days. But by then, are you going to go reshoot it? Are you going to go have the graphic artist redo the entire campaign?
Well, that's the question, right?
Gut check, right? At that point of like, I don't think we're going to piss anybody off. So like, okay, let's run the campaign. Are you really going to go reshoot everything? Unless there's like a blinking red light. What if you could put that into an AI tool that already gave you a resonance score, right? That said, hey, here's a storyboard. People are going to love this.
Or what if you could more quickly create the type of content people need in that amount of like that they're wanting to consume at the time? Because by the way, absolutely, everything you said about what people want to cry about or whatever else can also depend on what's going on in their life at a certain time, and that may change, right? Yeah. And so this idea of these long, drawn out and expensive production shoots to produce content that, by the way, is producing branded content that I know we all run to can lines and high five ourselves about. right. Yeah. We do. And we win awards, but the awards aren't given by the consumers.
Yeah.
Right.
That's always bothered me.
It's like, it's a very but it's like a very interesting thing. And look, I've been to Cannes many times. I think it's a really fun time. And there is definitely some really neat and compelling creative that comes out of it. But I also think that there's a very interesting juxtaposition there that says, what if you could use everyday people to become content creators, use the tool you talk about that tells you like what these people are looking for, and then very quickly have someone create it. And within 24 hours, like if not less, you've got content that's turned around that's going to be speaking to them that you could be pushing out and winning with. Like that seems like a really compelling utilization of AI and of technology in general to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and on the branded content side, that's what we end up running into is that we'll, like you said, we'll have a $500,000 shoot. And it's for a certain campaign, and we'll get a ton of content that really you can use for maybe a year, and then it's done. This with that type of creator software, programming, AI, whatever. Of hey, go through my entire library of stuff and make a new spot for me based on this emotion. This is my target, and all that. Like to be able to reuse, because right now it's very manual, and you have to rely on a creative, which they're very good at, to spark some type of emotional connection. I do think that that's a solution that AI will be able to kind of automate.
Totally, man. And by the way,
start, but yeah.
Well, yeah, you're going to need the start, and you're going to, by the way, you also we forget about more creative than we remember.
Right.
And so what about that? To your point about going through, the Nike example that you gave, well, what if you applied that same, mentality across the board? I mean, I had heard, who was I talking to the other day was telling me that, P&G did something similar where they went and looked at all of the successful campaigns and what the brand campaign was, the overall strategy and what they said. And then they actually went out, like knocked it out of the park. And they said, great, use that as our copywriter. Go look at what has worked for 100 years and then come back. And I realize it's going to change a little bit, but come back with those ideas and say, like, it's not, is it really this like crazy science? No, it's your point. Put the inputs, right? Make sure the input is solid.
But man, talk about a manual process.
Yeah.
You know, if you could automate that of, hey, give me even just the last 50 years, the most successful campaigns, press of a button, you know, I'm sure P&G has truckloads of data, right? Like that's
what I'm saying. That's what they're doing. They're pushing all of that into their AI algorithm to be able to learn that very quickly.
Yeah. But I think that's something like smaller brands you don't have to be the first mover on it. You know what I mean? Like you can take advantage of that stuff. Or if you want to be the first mover, it's infinitely easier for you to do because you don't have that much bureaucracy or decision making, whatever it is. So if you have a platform that is ready to go and you're like, hey, I'm just going to put all the inputs into it, that's pretty good solution.
Totally agree. By the way, like when you talk about smaller brands, I mean, I'm a big believer that this is a huge leg up for smaller brands in being able to compete. This whole like David and Goliath mentality that exists overall. But what else do you think? Like from a smaller brand perspective, what else does this open the doors for you to compete with the big boys?
Yeah, I mean, I think it does level the playing field a bit because look, if you don't have enough working or non-working spend in your budget to hire an agency, if you're that small of a brand, right? Like you have one graphic artist that's on contract, we'll say, like very, very small spend. If they have a tool or a platform that can 10x their work, you are now at the same level, right? You don't have to have an army or massive agency. You don't need publicists to do that if you've got essentially software and AI that can make it happen for you. So to me, it's a good equalizer. Sure, we can talk about like working budgets and media spend and all that's a bit different. You can't outshout anybody, but you'll be able to create a hell of a lot more content and have automated calendars and social and all of this stuff and create this maybe marketer in a box that you wouldn't have had before.
Totally. And you know, as we do that, I think one of the things, and as we start to automate more and more, leveraging AI and generative AI across the board, one of the things that always comes up though is you know, what is the ethical nature of the way that we think about ingesting the inputs, synthesizing the content, utilizing that content in certain ways, right? How do consumers feel about content or creative or even being targeted in those ways? So just generally, like what are your thoughts on the way that AI created things are communicated to consumers, right? Like should they have to know? Should they not know? I'm just curious to get your take.
Yeah, I just think we're fooling ourselves if we think that we're like these unique beings that aren't like an algorithm ourselves. Like they're the people who are really good at what they do on the marketing side. I'm saying really, especially creatives. They just kind of inherently know the code to a human. They just know what's going to stick with them, right? And so I don't think it's an unethical thing that if we figure that out on the AI side and we train it to like a blockbuster movie, you know, did you really need somebody to do Die Hard 2? Like you knew what you had to do, right? Like, oh no, we have to have a crack writing team and all these like, he's got to follow the first one and change it up a little bit here. But the ethics of it are interesting to me, it's more about how do you train the model?
Yeah.
Like what data sets do you use to make it intelligent and start to learn in the inputs? And obviously like privacy if people aren't comfortable with it. But I think people are much more comfortable with AI solutions and things. Like we're seeing stuff now when you scroll through a timeline, everybody looks for the 5 fingers on something, right? But
exactly
eventually,
right. Well, I mean, they think they look for the 6th, right. But yes, I'm with you.
Yeah, sorry, the 6th finger. Yeah, Jesus, yeah, the 6 fingers. I'm not the Simpsons. I don't have 4 fingers. But it you know, it's going to be indistinguishable pretty shortly, where you won't be able to tell, right? And I don't think that's that big of a deal. Is there a difference between that and like I have a JMW Turner reproduction on my wall? Well, that's not the original, but it's okay. I still like it. It's pretty. You know, I mean,
totally.
anyway.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting. I think that the other piece within all this is like, what does that transparency need to look like, which is kind of what you're alluding to. But then also, like, are there any sort of consequences that go along with the brand's decision, right, in how they want to portray what's been generated with AI or created with AI versus not? And how does that play in overall to just the way that they're thinking about, talking with their consumers? What does that look like? How ultimately do we think about the importance of transparency in your marketing efforts within this?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're gonna know right away if you've pissed off your customer in the world, and that's why there's good tools to help you do social listening and figure that out, right? And get real time. But I think you're always gonna need a human that's looking at stuff, taking temperature. I mean, I very, very quickly, Martin Luther King Day, probably 10, 12 years ago, I'm a big Florida State football fan. They put out a post that was MLK doing his "I Have a Dream" speech, and he had his arm out like that, and they photoshopped on a like wide receiver's glove onto it with the Florida State logo, and it was like, "I have a dream. It's MLK Day," and it was like the cringe. It was the absolute disaster. It got roasted for it. It was terrible.
Should have,
and yes, deservedly so. But
yeah,
a graphic artist had made that, right? Like they were like, "This looks good. This is the one. I'm going to make something pretty offensive," but AI does make stuff like that. That's
bizarre. You've seen how Google portrays our forefathers.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, what is this? But you have to have somebody. You can't just be asleep at the wheel. And so that's some of the stuff I do worry about. We're saying with like creative, when you do 10 versions of something and it's automated and it goes out on media, and it's updating. I think creative, you could have all these versions and update it, but man, somebody better be checking what that machine is making, because you could have a Florida State moment is really bad.
Very careful. Have to be very careful. Well, good. Casey, this has been super fun. I appreciate all of the insights overall. Any final thoughts, parting words for our audience?
Yeah, I think just very quickly, AI is not really intelligent yet. I think it's a really sharp automation, right? Like it's a good tool. It's a good algorithm, but, and obviously machine learning, it updates, it gets better. But true intelligence is you and I having this conversation and me picking up a phone over here and thinking about how I'm going to make ribs here in a minute. That's true intelligence. It's not there yet. It's going to get there. And that's crazy that it'll have essentially a neocortex, but everybody should just kind of chill that Skynet's going to blow up the world. It's nowhere near there. So with that said, you think of it as a tool. It's a really smart tool, right? But it's not on our level yet.
Appreciate that, certainly. And I don't want AI ever making my ribs. And that's a fact. So love it, man. Well, hey, thanks so much for joining me. I certainly appreciate it. Really excited to continue to watch and see how your career grows, and certainly appreciate the time and insights today.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, take care, Casey.